I'm welcoming Heidi Clark to the Building Bliss podcast this morning. Hello.
Hello. I feel this is going to get weird if we're just eye contacting each other.
I'll stare at the plants just to make it less awkward, just nice plants. So I met Heidi through our comedy pursuits. I think we've known each other about 3 years now, roughly.
I think it's 3 years, yeah.
Yeah, so we've both done comedy writing courses together, stand-up courses, and then have hit the circuit together as well, which has been very fun and eye-opening in equal measure. But I was very interested to hear Heidi's story because, as I was just saying to her before we started recording, I know Heidi well through what we do, but generally we're just messing about and we don't always get into past lives. Not past lives, but our past life. So I'm really interested to hear your backstory. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
You're very welcome.
Really good to have you here.
It's funny you should mention past lives. I don't know if you remember me ever showing you a picture of a doppelganger from the 1920s, and she was a suffragette, and someone had seen this picture of this suffragette on a history tweet on Twitter, and she was the exact of me. She looked exactly like me, same hair, same face. It was really strange. And you know, when you're like, yeah, go on, I'll have that.
Yeah,
I think
pretty
probably
cool life to have.
I mean, I'm not sure I believe in like past lives.
Yeah.
But if I did believe in past lives, I'd be like, yeah, I'd be quite happy to be named as a suffragette because I've never been a well-behaved woman.
Right.
So
I was going to say that's right on brand for you, being a suffragette, I think.
I'd say so, yeah.
I've got a friend actually who had a very similar thing happen to her, but she was an arch criminal, so she was less enraptured with that.
Oh,
apparently there was a Mary Cross on the first convict ship sent to Australia.
Welcome back.
Yeah, that's obviously my past life coming back to haunt me. So, do you want to tell us a bit about your background and how you've ended up here? Because you're not from the Wirral now, or Liverpool, are you? From Bournemouth originally, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I saw something the other day and it exactly explained how my brain works. There was a picture of a road map and it said, this is how you explain something if you don't have ADHD. And then there was a second picture and it was like the spaghetti junction, like on steroids. This is how you explain things if you do have ADHD. Now, as far as I'm aware, I don't have ADHD, but I never explain things like from there to there. It always just does this. So hang on in there. So I'm originally from Bournemouth. I was born there. I have, 3 brothers, 3 sisters, 3 half-sisters. And to kind of give you a flavour of what normal life was for me, only 3 of my siblings have the same parents. So my mum, who I don't really call mum because I don't really speak to her, she really struggled. So my granddad was a Greek Cypriot and he came to this country as a single man, and I believe, according to Ancestry.com, he was married to someone from London before he met our nan. And when he moved down to Bournemouth and met my nan, they had 2 children, but she sadly passed away when my mum was about 4 or 5. She had cancer, never quite got to the bottom of which type of cancer she had, but she passed really young and left 2 children behind with a Greek Cypriot man who has no concept of the culture. His language skills weren't perfect at the time. And he was there for 2 daughters. Like,
wow.
You know, culturally.
Yeah, baptism of fire.
I think so. I think maybe if he'd had 2 sons, he would be different. And I think that kind of set up the scene for how life was going to look for them growing up. And it's only now as an adult reflecting back, you can kind of connect the dots and go, right, I see what happened there. And the story is very, very long, so I'll try and kind of skim over some of the fun stuff. So my mum didn't make the best choices with relationships with men, hence lots of children, lots of different dads involved, or not involved actually, because mine was, my sperm donor was a bit of a one-night stand. He was married, they were out that's kind of how I happened.
Right.
And I didn't meet him till I was about 16, 17. He wasn't interested. I wasn't interested. I thought he was a bit of a dick, to be honest. Quite happy to let that one go. The only thing he gave me was blonde hair and blue eyes. You know, just like, great, I'm just good for Hitler now.
Good to find that out at least and say, well, that's it.
Yeah.
I met and I can put that to bed now.
I've met that one and I don't like it and goodbye.
Yeah.
So my mum really struggled. I think she struggled with her mental health, and I think she probably still does. But there was a lot of drugs involved. I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of drugs. Some people would say there wasn't. I would say, are you fucking blind? So I was probably a young carer from, I'd say about the age of 9, 10. So there was me and an older brother. And then my mum met my stepdad, and he is the person I do call dad. And they weren't married for that long though. And they then had my next youngest sister. So, and then a succession of children followed. They got divorced, and then 2 more children came. So there was a lot of kids, but my mum didn't really get to achieve anything. She didn't really get to go to college. She didn't get to go to university, and she could probably have done all those things. But I think she was mentally ill, and she was medicating with drugs and men, really. And she was not present as a parent, so she would disappear and go off on benders. So we'd have a few days where she wasn't about. So I was in charge. I had an older brother, but culturally in our household, and I think this is where my granddad's, his influence had come in. Men don't do a tap, women do everything.
Yeah.
So my older brother was like the royalty, and I was the slave, and that's kind of how I saw it. And I knew from an early age this is not normal. There was a lot of criminality, so there are lots of funny stories about when our house has been raided by the police.
More material for your stand-up.
I got more material for my stand-up, and you know that some of my stand-up has a hint at my past, but I kind of flip it. So having shoplifters come to the house quite regularly and taking your shopping order, we all know that that's part of my set. But it's completely true. Everything that's in my set is true. If I'm telling you that we had shoplifters come in, taking our shopping order and offering to buy me alcohol at a young age, it's true. It happened.
It's making more sense now. I know the backstory. Definitely.
So I suppose you could say, like, I didn't get to make choices. When I was younger, I knew very early on I was going to be the responsible person in the household, and I was almost the protector of all these other human beings. I didn't want that job, but it was given to me, and I had no choice, really. So that's sort of where I've come from. And Bournemouth is a very affluent place, but not all of it is affluent. And I really felt like the scum of the earth there. And like, because like people in school weren't very nice to me. I had a nice core group of friends, but there was the periphery of bullying on a constant basis because I looked different.
Yeah.
Because I was tatty. I had those shoes that I don't know if you remember these, because we're about the same sort of age. I'm a little bit older than you, aren't I?
I'm 46.
Oh no, it's the same age.
Same age,
There we go. So do you remember years ago there were these little black, like really big shoes, and they had an acid smiley face on them? Did you get them up here?
I think so, yeah.
So I absolutely loved them, and I insisted that I needed a pair of those for school. Not because everybody else had them, but because everybody else didn't want to wear them, but I did for that reason. And I insisted on having these shoes, but they were really shit quality. They were really poor quality shoes, and they kept breaking at the front. And so I was the person walking around school constantly with these shoes that went like this at the front, not at the back, like flip-flops, at the front. I looked like a frigging clown. But so that was just a measure, like things like producing new shoes. I mean, now if a teacher saw a child walking around in shoes like that, they'd just go and buy them a pair, which is wrong.
Yeah. Or find some in lost property that they could pass on.
Well, yeah. But I found like that school either didn't notice that something didn't seem quite right, or they weren't bothered. And as an adult, when I reflect back on that, it makes me really angry that I got left by all the other responsible adults that should have had my back and didn't. So I'm kind of a little bit pissed off with authority in general, which I think has probably shaped how I am as a person. So that coming from that wealthy place where it's very obvious that you're not wealthy, I found it very difficult. I was absolutely drowning in Bournemouth.
Yeah, and I think you feel that at your core when you can sense that difference. And obviously, it sounds like you had to grow up very quickly.
Yeah.
So you probably had a greater degree of maturity than a lot of your friends or the cohort you were in. And that sets you apart as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. I still did all the other stuff, like when I could. So if I wanted to go out with friends, it was a rigmarole. I had to wait until she came back, and that would sometimes be late, and then I wouldn't be able to go out because everyone would have already been out. But when she was having a really good day, when she was on the ball, I had freedom. I could go and do things, normal things that other kids are doing. And yes, of course, I went and got bladdered in the park with my friends and, fell asleep in bushes and stuff like that.
You did order the Mad Dog 2020 when you were quite young, didn't you?
Quite young, yeah. And actually, the reason I now don't drink orange-flavoured alcohol is because of 2020. Do you remember it used to have a little plastic straw next to it?
I've had some bad nights out on that. I remember drinking a whole bottle before a dress rehearsal of a show that I was in when I was in youth theatre. It was not a good dress rehearsal. I think I fell off the stage at one point.
I mean, they were gross flavours. Are they kiwi and lime, was it?
I'm very interested to hear all that. I had no idea about all that. So that was a fascinating backdrop to our questions today, hopefully. So the 5 pillars of bliss that the podcast is founding on is bravery, laughter, inspiration, spark, and success. So we're going to follow those through and ask you some questions. So the first one is bravery. And I've asked you to think about a moment in your life when you think was your bravest for you.
I had a really good think about this because I wouldn't really consider myself brave, more like stupid. But I did have a really good think about it. And I took my mind back to when I was 18. So given I had a family where I wasn't able to make my own choices, I couldn't do things for myself. If I wanted to do something like really exciting, like, maybe get a job in the arts, like that was never going to be a thing for me because I needed to be practical. And I learned quite early to be really practical about my choices. So I decided I'd been introduced to a youth club. And when I was able to go, I used to go, and I ended up doing a bit of volunteering there when I was in my sort of mid-teens. And I really enjoyed it. And then I found out, well, what's that like as a career? Like, do you get paid well, or is it rubbish money? Can I live my own life if I do a job like this? So I decided that I wanted to do youth and community and go to university. So there were a few bumps in the road just to get to that point. I knew that's what I wanted. I told my family that's what I wanted. They absolutely didn't believe that I was capable of doing any of those things. And we had a little bump in the road. So my mum went to prison for a few months. And while she was gone, I was then fully responsible at the age of about 16 for an entire household. Now, there were adults milling around. But they weren't really there. They weren't there in the evenings or, like when it was time to turn all the lights off and lock the doors. Like, I was still a child left with a load of children.
So how many of your siblings were there at that point?
All of them, including the older knobhead.
All of them?
Oh, hang on. No. One wasn't born. He wasn't thought of. He was just a scratch in the ocean. And the other one, she was pregnant, I think, when she was in prison. So there was 3 plus the neighbour's child because their mum had also gone to prison. Long story. So getting to it.
Yeah.
So when I was due to go and start college, I didn't get the right GCSEs. So I had to resit them. So my first year of college, I had to resit GCSEs, which was around exam time when she decided she needed to go to prison for a few months, which is incredibly selfish. So in order to get on to the next course, which was an MVQ in health and social care, it was an advanced course, so it's like 2 A-levels in one. I was not going to get the grades because I'd missed far too much prep time. So I made my mum write a letter to the college explaining herself and telling them why I wasn't able to adequately study for my GCSEs like all the other normal kids. And they gave me a place. So I didn't deserve the place. I got the place based on me telling her to step up and be responsible for 1 minute. So
at least one adult could actually see your potential and also realise you'd not had the opportunities that other people had, who perhaps you deserved a chance.
Yeah. So smashed that course, didn't have any problems with that. Then I started getting interviews at universities, and I think this is when my mum probably realised shit was getting real now, that I wasn't joking. I intended to leave, and I had a plan, and the plan was, I am going to pick the university that is furthest away from Bournemouth. I don't care what university it's like, couldn't give a shit. That's where I'm going. So I got into better universities closer to Bournemouth, but they're too close. So I went to a university in North Wales because that was furthest away. And it took me a while to figure it out because there was a couple that were kind of on the map. I was like, no, that's further.
You just got a vision in a Mattis chart with like string. So technically the furthest away.
So getting to the question about probably the first time I realised that I could do brave things was the day I left, because it was a really, really horrible day. And I don't think I've ever seen my mum have so much emotion, so much crying, like, we're going to miss you. And I'm like, you're not actually going to miss me. You're going to miss my presence in that I do everything for you.
Everything that you do.
Everything you're supposed to do, I do. And now I'm leaving you because I'm not doing it anymore. And it was very, very difficult because there were things going on in and around the household and the community that were unsafe. And I knew they were unsafe. But I think it was the first time I realised I cannot be responsible for all of these small humans anymore. I'm not doing it. I have to leave. And my stepdad and his very strange girlfriend at the time kind of got an MO for it because he did marry my mother. So we got like he took me and like you could see like in the background it was like, like a really sad movie scene, but like it was scary for me. She looked terrified. I could see her in the back as we were driving away. She looked absolutely terrified, and I didn't return. I came back on holidays and occasionally. I didn't really stay with her after that because I couldn't. After I cut the cord, I was like, that's it. I'm not doing your shit no more. So that was probably the first time. And up until you asking me that question and me seeing the questions, I hadn't really thought about it because I never really pitched myself as brave. But it was very, very hard to leave my brothers and sisters in a situation where there were no guarantees and step away and know that that was the right thing to do. But if I hadn't, I would not have had a life.
No. And you might not be here yourself because the strain of dealing with all that. So
I'd have probably had about 9 kids, probably had a habitual drug habit, probably have very severe mental health problems. I don't think if I'd stayed there, I would not have had a life that I wanted to choose. I still didn't get to quite choose anyway, but because I had to choose practical. And I think later on we kind of come on to it, like how I've sort of stumbled into comedy. But we'll come back to that one.
Yeah, I think that's the thing though, when you're saying about never thought of yourself as brave or a particular moment, because it was you had to do it. There was no other choice in that moment, so you wouldn't necessarily go, well, I'm being brave. You had to do it for your own mental health, for your own sanity. But then you can look back and go, wow, that was quite a moment. So what was it like then, like your first week at university, and how did you feel?
I was so lost. Like, I think when you grow up in an environment where it's just pure chaos, no one's teaching you anything either. So you don't know about budgeting. You don't know how to cook things that aren't in a deep fat fryer or come out of a box. You don't really know how to be a young adult. You just have no clue. Like, I always had jobs, like I always, like earned money, but I had to always hand it over. So I had no concept of, I've suddenly got some money in my hand. I don't know what to do with it. And it was really scary. The first few weeks, I didn't find people very friendly either, because I didn't realise that there was a Welsh English thing going on.
Yeah. Which part of North Wales was it?
Wrexham.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
So, like, I didn't know that was a thing. Again, I didn't come from an environment where anyone would have ever told me that. And, like, particularly Southerners. So what I've learned as time has progressed, Southern English people are like the shit on the shoe of the country, aren't they?
Yeah.
The Irish hate us, the Scots hate us, probably the Mancunians hate us, everybody hates us. Scousers hate us. And when you're like, okay, so it was like my first pip at discrimination as well. Like, this is different. I didn't know what to do with it, but I found university very difficult in the sense that I never quite slotted in because I didn't quite understand how I was supposed to be. And when I saw, like, a lot of the people that were at the university that I was at came from not necessarily privileged backgrounds, but certainly polar opposite to what my experiences have been. I didn't connect with anybody who came from the same chaos, except this one person. And they were even too chaotic for me. And I just think, well, that's judgy of me.
Yeah.
But
you don't want to bring more chaos when you've just escaped it.
No. And ironically, I ended up moving with her here to Liverpool. And then it ensued in a lot more chaos. But I found it very difficult to fit in. And I was only there for practicalities as well. Again, still got my practical brain on. What I really need to do, I only need the diploma. I don't need the degree, because the diploma will get me a job that I want that pays quite well, which means I can look after myself and stay away from Bournemouth. Yeah. And that's all that mattered. So I kind of, like, all the other stuff that went on, like, I was involved with it at the time. Like, I socialized, I had friends, but again, I was still kind of on the periphery, a bit of an outcast, was seen a little bit differently. Like, I don't now have any contact with a single person that I went to university with, not one. And I can barely remember most of them. Yeah. Because they just didn't build up that much significance for me. And that's a shame, really. But I didn't connect with them. We were just very, very different people. And I don't think I was understood. So I just kind of, I'm just going to go through the motions of this university thing. But I'm only here to collect a piece of paper and then I intend on leaving. Yeah. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah. Which is probably quite opposite to a lot of people's view. Obviously, in our era, it was like, go to university, have a great time. And, the social side's probably more important. But I was very similar. When I went to university, I'd only literally turned 18, like 3 weeks before I moved out of home and into halls with 8 other girls. And yeah, I felt very isolated. Obviously, I was hiding my sexuality as well at the time. And so I really resonate with what you're saying about not necessarily slotted in. I mean, luckily I did make very good friends with the people I lived with. And then we went on to live together for the next few years as well as we came out of halls. But it's a really difficult time. And I think, like, my kids are teenagers now. And I would never say, you must go to university, because I don't think it suits everybody. And I think you're too young if you do go at 18. I think you need a bit of life experience. I mean, obviously, you'd had a lot of life experience, so it would probably seem quite, tame to you. But, it's interesting, isn't it, when you look back at things like that and who you stayed in touch with, and I wonder what they're doing.
I mean, I did have a good time. Like, I racked up loads of debt. I mean, I think it might have been my knowledge of how to work credit cards from an early age. I was probably one of the youngest people that knew how to clean the back strip of a credit card to remove the signature so it could be reused for criminal activity.
I didn't do that. You just knew how to do it.
That's a story for another day.
I had a late night edition.
That's the late night edition. That's probably with some sirens on, in the hope that no one's going to come and arrest me later. So I didn't know how to manage money either. So I didn't know how to manage a credit card or a checkbook or a bank account. I had no idea how to do any of these things. And so I did probably waste a lot of my overdraft on alcohol, shit I didn't need. I even went on holiday to Tunisia, which I didn't like. Didn't like it there. Liked my trip to Israel. That was cool. These are all just really practical ways of spending a student money, aren't they?
Yeah. Don't spend it on living. I mean, I don't know about you, but I was probably one of the last ages to get a grant. So I actually got a grant.
I did, I got a grant,
which paid for my halls basically, and then I think I worked alongside to pay for it. But I think all my money went on alcohol and Findus crispy pancakes. What I lived on.
My signature dish was mashed cheese and beans.
Yeah.
Cards.
Oh dear. Well, that was quite a big, brave moment for you to do that. So I don't know whether I can actually ask this, but do you think you've got braver as you've got older?
I don't know if I've got braver or just smarter.
Yeah.
I think things that we don't do when we're younger, we don't really learn until we get older. So I remember seeing a quote, and whether Helen Mirren had said it or not, there's this meme knocking about that Helen Mirren had said, we should tell people to fuck off more often. And when I saw that, I thought, this we really should. We really should, though. And I probably should have started telling people to fuck off and meaning it when I was younger. And I didn't. And I think that's about is that being brave or is that being assertive? I'm not really sure which it is.
Probably a bit of both, isn't it, really? I think it's being brave enough to know that you can deal with the consequences of being that assertive, isn't it? And because when you assert boundaries, people fall away sometimes, or they resist the boundary that you're trying to assert. I'm a recovering people pleaser, and probably only this year, learning to put boundaries in place. So, there's a few people I need to do that too, I think. A bit more often. It's something I've never done. But it is then you set a boundary and then you're like, oh, God.
I've definitely got better at setting boundaries, but I think the boundary setting has only really come in the last few years. Like we're taught and conditioned to believe certain things about our lives, like you must love your family unconditionally. That's a fucking lie. You don't have to. Who says? Who decided that was a good idea? Probably a man, actually.
Or religion.
Probably religion. And we know that a lot of hate is born from politics and religion. So we should probably just ignore both of those things. But I think I've got more choices now which allow me to be braver. I can say no to things that I would never have said no to. I think I've been a horrible people pleaser because I think I've always tried to fit in somewhere, and I don't know why really, because if I don't fit in somewhere I really don't give a fuck actually.
And you don't want to please somewhere you don't fit in, so
no.
But I think, like you say, going back to your childhood of feeling a bit on the peripheries of your friends, then there is something inside you that wants to fit in and find a tribe, so you do bend round. And I know it's similar to me when you've had that dealing with things at home from a young age where you have to keep the peace and bend to make sure everybody else is okay. It's deeply ingrained, and it is hard to turn around and say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore.
No, not do that no more. And I think even in my career as well, the amount of places I've seen my active people pleasing playing out and then not serving me particularly well, I just think, you bloody idiot, Heidi, why would you do that? I was laughing at a book that you've got on the table here around working with emotional intelligence, and one of my jobs that I had, it was a place where I ended up becoming very poorly as a result of a psychotic manager. There is no non-disclosure, by the way, so I can say what I like. So he actually he wasted organisation money on getting the team to have emotional intelligence tests. You know, those pages.
Like
psychometric testing. Not because he wanted to identify how he could best make use of the skills of the people in the team. He wanted that so he could see how he could manipulate and control people. And one of my friends, who we will be talking about probably a little bit later, she deliberately fudged the test. So I didn't realize it was a choice for me at the time. Otherwise, I'd have probably gone a step further and gone, no, fuck off. I didn't take it particularly seriously, and I definitely didn't answer all of the questions, like, honestly, because I thought there's no value in this for me. Like, I know I'm not a moron. I don't need a test to tell me I'm not, emotionally intelligent, or I am, because I know I must be. So, but she catastrophically just fucked it on purpose just to mess with his head. And, when you're like, at that point, I wish I had been just a little bit more braver and just folded my arms and gone, no, I'm not doing it. Because I didn't want to do it. I said I didn't want to. Yeah. I didn't see the point. And I felt the control. You could see the red flags, which is very odd in an industry like ours to see that kind of behavior. It's not prolific in sort of social care. So I kind of knew what this was about, and I kind of played along a little bit more than I probably should have done. And I should have just gone, no, fuck off. But at the time I was pregnant as well. So I was sort of carrying this precious cargo and thinking, I haven't got time to be defiant right now. I'm just going to have to behave.
And I need security with my job, and that all plays into it as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. So moving on to laughter now. Yeah, let's see how we met and comedy.
Hello.
And you're a stand-up comedian as well. Enjoying that.
Having a go with that. Yeah. Having a go.
So what made you want to have a go at stand-up comedy in the first place and do, of course?
So I think the pandemic was probably the caveat? I'm never good with the words. That's the one, catalyst. There we go. See, that was the catalyst, but there's always been a little bit of something there. We talked about the lack of choices that I had when I was younger. If I was able to choose what I wanted, it would have probably been performing arts. It would have been something creative. It wouldn't have been like a serious, sort of career or anything. It would, not that acting and comedy aren't serious.
A desk job.
Serves people. But it's not what I would have chosen. I would have definitely chosen something creative. And it's always been in me, and people have always said, like, throughout my career, oh, you'd be really funny on a stage. And like, I kind of like understood what they meant, but also, hell no, there's no way I'm going on a stage. There's no way I'm holding a microphone. I've got nothing to say that's of value. I'm not that funny. I can't write, like all of those, like, no's. And then the pandemic, like, sent me a bit wild. I got made redundant. I was really bored. I was working. I was working at a rehab on bank for a local organisation. So in between letting go to school, because he had to, because we were both working, and then in the evenings I had nothing to do, and I kept seeing this course pop up from our mate Jane Postlethwaite, and I asked a friend of mine who is an actor and said, do you recognise that person? Because I don't know who they are. Are they legit, or is this one of them Facebook scams? Jane will love this story. So my friend wasn't sure, so she asked one of her friends again, who's also a well-known actor, and they said, yeah, I've heard of her. She's legit. It's not a scam. So I was like, right, okay. And that was it then. And it's the first time I've spent money on something creative for myself. And that was it then. When I met Jane and I did that first session, I absolutely loved it. And I'd forgotten what it was like to have that much fun. I think the first activity we did that stayed with me was, do you remember doing it? You would have done it. Where we had people on the other screen, and you had to talk about something in the background that you really loved. Yeah. And the minute you got to switch it and talk about what you didn't love, I was just in my element. It was just so much fun. And that was it then. I was hooked. And I think since then, Jane has been very generous towards me, because I haven't always had the resources for all of her courses. And that all rhymed. Well, we didn't add that into a jingle later. So she's been very generous for me and offered me lots of opportunities to do, I think, every single course that she's got on offer. And at the time, I didn't realise where it was going to take me. I just knew that I really enjoyed it, and it made me feel a little bit alive for myself. Not that life is dead, because I have a very nice life. I'm very lucky in life. But I felt like there was just this little something, this little nagging thing, that something has always called me, and I've never been able to kind of play with it. And, Jane gave me that opportunity. And then when I started meeting people, and then I think when we had our first few improv sessions where we met, when you're like, these are my people.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very blessed. I've got some good friends, but sometimes they're not quite your people.
Yeah.
And then
it's different friends for different things as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. The tribe that we've gathered, because we're all a bit bonkers.
I think or trauma.
Yeah. There's definitely a strong link between trauma and comedy.
Definitely is.
But yeah, I think finding that tribe and just being able to play and be an absolute knob, really, and be silly. It's like you're getting your childhood back that perhaps you didn't get.
Yeah.
That when you were younger.
It's just so much fun, and connecting with you and some of our friends that we've met through comedy, and we've stayed friends as well. I think we stay friends because we have a really deep-rooted connection with each other, and that is really, really important. But I think the first gig I did was about a year ago. I think
Is it the Serenity gig? Oh no, you did the open mic in the.
I did a couple of open mics because I don't think Jane would have let me anywhere near that microphone without some practice. Can't remember how many I've done before. So hilarious, because I think that was in March.
Yeah, you were kind of the term behind us when you did the stand-up course.
Yeah,
Later than us, yeah.
a little bit behind, which is kind of how I roll anyway. I'm just a little bit behind trying to figure it all out. But people always say this, and I know that I get asked, and sometimes I wonder if people believe me when I say I'm not sick before I go on a stage. I don't really feel that, and I don't know if that's years of therapy, and I'm just like I'm dead inside.
Yeah, well, I always say that you are my emotional support animal at gigs, because I've got less nerves as I've gone on, but when I've just done hot water, and there was a lot of other things going on at the same time.
Hot water?
Yeah.
That is the rise.
Yeah, no, with my mum and everything else, my therapist and everything that was going on. But you have such a calm and steady presence, and it is amazing to see how unfazed you are when you're performing yourself as well.
Yeah, it's the aftermath for me. So I'm all right. Give me the mic. It feels like it's going to sound like the cheesiest cheesy thing you can say, but it kind of feels like home, like I'm meant to be there, and almost like it doesn't massively matter what comes out of my mouth. I think that's been the last year of kind of working a little bit around the circuit, and gigs when I've really tanked and gone, and sobbed for days and felt really bad. It's the aftermath for me. It's the self-deprecation comes the minute I get off the stage, and then analysing everything that was shit, because that's what we're conditioned for, isn't it?
Yeah.
Our brains are very much conditioned to look at all the shit stuff. Oh, you did that wrong, you did that wrong. And yeah. And then when you get some wanker interrupt, do you remember that gig we did? And that those two drunk people kept gagging in on my punchlines.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. When you're like, I don't know what's stopping me from like screaming in their face right now. But I remained like really composed, and I tried to make the best of it. But really what I wanted to do was wrap the mic around their heads. But like I knew like there was a third party involvement, but when there's no third party involvement and it's all on me, I then get really, really quite down about it. And that's something that I've really got to work on for myself, because that's when it stops being fun.
Yeah, and I think that's the danger, isn't it? Because for me, obviously, I wanted to be a comedian from when I was like 8 and used to watch Victoria Wood, but only started doing it just before the pandemic. I think I did Jane's last in-person workshop. And yeah, when you start to put too much sort of stock in it, because you're like, it's my childhood dream and I want to be brilliant at it. And then you're like, hang on, it's comedy. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to have a laugh. And I think we both try and deploy the Millikan principle everywhere. We're allowed to sulk till 11 o'clock this morning about a bad gig. And then That's it.
Yeah.
Put it away.
Sometimes I go a little bit past that. My first gig close to where I live, I mean, we've talked about it a few times. I tanked so bad. And like my friends and family were there as well. And they were like, no, you didn't tank. And I'm like, well, why didn't you fucking laugh then? The room was just silent. You could have had a pin drop. I was dying on the inside. And like someone was trying to, when someone tries to put a shit sandwich together for you and you're like, no, this isn't going to help me actually. Yeah. Like I'm actually too clever for this shit sandwich. They were like, but you had the room's attention. No one was bored. You're like, no. I think they were all just traumatized from the previous act who was really energetic, like super high energy, almost to the point where I could always feel the anxiety. I was like, oh my God, how am I gonna do this? I put too much pressure on myself. Yeah. I felt somehow I'd made it really important that this one went really well. And actually, yes, of course, it's always nice when gigs go well, but I really needed to experience proper tanking because that was the first time it had happened. Whereas I've got by on my cheeky little set, and when it doesn't go well, you're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, you just gotta go through it. I mean, I think it's the only the thing that I love about comedy, which is also one of the downsides, is you can only learn by doing it. And like, if you add up what the stage time we've probably had collectively, it's probably no more than 3 hours or something ridiculous with our 5 and 10 minute sets. Well, you look at the people who are on TV or whatever, 11 years into their career, thinking of Stephen Bailey, he's only just hosted the Apollo. And it's taken him 11 years of doing all the clubs, probably tanking. Like, obviously, he does a lot of gay comedy. I can imagine him going down not so well in some of the pubs that we might do a set in. So, and everyone's been through that. So you've just got to remember that when you're sort of being self-critical.
Yeah, it's very difficult. But I think I'm getting a little bit better at it. But I think I'm not going to be there for a while. And I think some of that is about not having the time. Yeah. That I would love to dedicate to comedy. I haven't got the time, but kind of readdressing all of those boundaries again for myself and saying, well, do you know what? It's okay to not have enough time for that because actually I need to prioritize family or health or work, because those are the things that keep all my structure around me, and comedy is just a lovely bonus. I do try and enjoy lots of comedy as well. So I'll try and get to as many gigs as I can just to go and watch. There's a few really good ones that are near my house. So there's one in particular, they have pretty decent acts on. So I quite enjoy going to that because it's just down the road.
Yeah, it's handy.
And I'm not plugging for free.
No.
Unless they're going to pay me. Yeah.
Is that laugh out?
It would be. Yeah. But we're not giving up freebies. No.
Yeah. So I'm going to say, what makes you laugh? Who are your favourite comedians or style that you enjoy?
I do love Sarah Millican.
Yeah.
I think she's probably one of my favourite. Probably when I was younger, Victoria Wood would definitely have been somebody for me. I just love the way she is. I love her comedy. I think Sarah Millican is one of my faves, and I think it's because it's very observational, very matter-of-fact, day by day. And I don't know if a lot of women of our age will fall into like the matter-of-fact, this is what's happening around me, and then we're kind of retelling it. I quite like that because women are so busy. Like in the 1940s, women didn't do all of this shit. They just stayed at home. They were forced to stay at home and wipe the asses of small children and serve their husbands. They didn't have to have jobs. Even if they wanted them, they weren't allowed them. So women didn't have all of these extra things. Now we're expected to be everything all of the time. And there's a lot of comedy in that, trying to juggle family, life, focus on your health, look after your mental health, make sure you do something and be mindful. Yeah. And I'm the least mindful person because there's just not enough room left in there. No. So I really like observational comedy. I think probably Kathy Burke is one of my absolute favourites. And I think it's because I wouldn't say she's political. She's very caring. She really gives a shit about human beings. Yeah. And I love how she tells that. And I love the way she swears so much with it. I mean, years ago, people are, people who swear a lot are not very clever, and that's a lie.
Ladylike, is it?
It's not very ladylike, is it? Well, none of us are very ladylike, are we? And why should we be?
No.
And what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Could spend a whole nother hour on what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
But I think Kathy Burke is probably my favourite. I love her, the way she talks about human beings as human beings, and she kind of challenges, the sort of the status quo of how we see society and how we see poverty and people who are like on the floor. Like, she elevates them, she makes them sound like, well, she doesn't make them sound, but they are important human beings. And I think if you sat me in a room with her, I could probably chat to her for hours about just what it is to be a human being and to be kind, and to kind of challenge when people are being absolute knobheads.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. She speaks out as actually where a lot of people are afraid to do so. And gets a lot of flack for it.
She does.
I mean, obviously, I follow her on Twitter, and she gets some serious abuse, but I really don't think she gives a shit. Like, genuinely, there's some people who say they don't, but they do deep down. But I think genuinely she doesn't.
Genuinely, I don't think she gives a flying fuck what other people think, and I don't think that's not a bad thing. I mean, there's some element for me, I'm not quite there in terms of not caring what other people think, but she doesn't have to.
No,
because she's in a position of power. She's got a voice, and I kind of think if I could emulate a comedian like Kathy Burke, where you can have a voice and you can do something good with that, like, that's kind of where I would like to be at some point.
Well, that kind of brings us on to the next topic of inspiration, because it sounds like she's been an inspiration to you.
She has. So I do have a friend of mine that I met 10 years ago in one of my jobs where we had the dick boss. She's the same person. Her name's Nikki. She's the same person that deliberately fudged the emotional intelligence test. I was thinking about, like, why is she an inspiration for me? And I went to visit her recently. She's moved to Jersey for a job, and she's not long lost her mum. And I don't know if that's about her being brave or going, right, I need a complete change, because she's from Scotland.
Right.
So she's come from Scotland. She's gone to Jersey to take on this job. She doesn't know the culture. She doesn't know the community. She doesn't know a bloody person on the island. And she's just gone, no, fuck it, go on, I'll try that and give it a go. But she is a real inspiration. Like, we've been friends for 10 years, and we met during work, and we connected very quickly. And she always jokes with me. She's like, all of my friends are neurodiverse, Heidi. And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. And the last time I saw her, she was like, yeah, but Heidi. like she's like, your ADHD is spilling all over the place. And I'm like, no, I'm not really sure it is. But she's an inspiration because she doesn't let up for a second. She is relentless and fierce in so many different ways. So whenever I spend time with her, or we'll have a little chat through text or something, like, she challenges me in a way that nobody has ever challenged me before. She really makes me think. She's a real empath for the world. So we host foreign students at our house to make a couple of extra quid. And we'd accepted a student who has halal. And I hadn't really thought about it. And we were chatting about it because she's a vegetarian. Of course she's a vegetarian. She's not going to want to eat something with a face on it because she's just too good a human being for that. And she said, Heidi, why would you accept that? And I'm like, accept what? And she's like, why would you accept somebody who wants to eat meat that way? And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. And then she's like, how is halal produced? And when you're like, well, I never really thought about that. Now, this isn't about someone else's culture. This is about, like, what we're prepared to accept as human beings as being okay. Yeah. And actually, no, it's not okay. And I think she's probably the first person that's made me work on my no's with people, because I think, isn't it in Grey's Anatomy? No is a whole sentence.
Yes.
I've never watched it, But I picked that up from somebody else, and they said, "Oh, that's from Grey's Anatomy." Okay, I'm not watched that program, but she really makes me see that. Like, she opens up my brain and kind of, like, I don't have to explain how my brain goes with her. She totally gets it, and that's probably because she's also on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And she's very, very clever. Like, if she, like, say, like, that rock on the table, what is that?
That's labradorite crystal.
Another labradorite crystal. So I would look at that and go, okay, that's a labradorite crystal. That's very interesting. It's very pretty. And that would be the end of my engagement with that particular piece of rock. Nikki, however, will then go away and look at all of the origins of that and trace it back to, like, medieval times or beyond, so that she then knows everything there is to know about that rock. And she is like that with everything.
Right.
Music, literature, the art, people. And you're just like, wow, that she's something else. But she makes me a better human being.
Yeah.
Whenever I go and spend time with her, I come back feeling like a better human being. And you can't really ask for more than that.
It's great when you come across people like that in life, and I call them soul sisters or soul family. And because, as we discussed, your family isn't always necessarily who you feel actually aligned with, but if you can find someone like that can have such a massive impact in your life, it has such a profound effect on everything you do, doesn't it? And you know that you'll be bonded for life through thick and thin. Whatever happens, you might have always stay in touch with each other all the time, but you know that they'll be there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of people going, well, how come I wasn't your inspiration, Heidi? Sorry, you can't unpack my brain like Nikki Karen. Sorry.
No. And are there any other sort of inspirations for your comedy? You've discussed that with people who influence you. Is there anybody else that inspires you in the public domain?
In the public domain? Do you know what? I'm not that deep. I try not to pay too much attention. And I don't often remember people's names. I don't know if you've ever picked up on that. I don't have a good memory for people. Someone has to be truly quite memorable for me to remember them.
Yeah.
And that isn't me being disrespectful to another person. It's just that unless I've made a connection with someone, I'm probably going to forget them.
Yeah.
Which is probably why I don't remember people from university. I remember almost nobody from school. I have one really good friend from school, and that's it. And I think someone has to bring something to my table for them. And I think when you look at people in the public domain, these are people that often are not bringing anything to my table.
No.
So therefore they don't feel important to me.
They don't register.
They don't register.
Yeah.
I can kind of, and I don't know if that's because I've had a lot of therapeutic interventions. I can just go boop, and just drop them.
Yeah.
No. There's lots of people that get in my tits.
Yeah. We discussed this another one, reverse inspiration. I don't want to be like them. But maybe that's the difference in perhaps our neurodivergence, that's perhaps an ADHD trait maybe, whereas my daughter's autistic and has ADHD, and I'll do things and say things and she just points to me and goes, well, autistic. And I'm like, yeah, that explains that, whereas I remember the minutiae detail of everything at the time, and it's exhausting. I wish I had quite like a pen drive to be able to download some of my thoughts. So we've talked about who inspires you. Well, how would you like to inspire them?
I often think that because the work that I do does mean, whether it's inspiring or motivating, I think is probably a little bit. I forgot the question already. Look at that.
So how do you want to inspire other people?
I think I kind of want to show people, like, you've got choices. There's doors and you can walk through them, and there are choices that you can make. In the work that I do, a lot of the work is around encouraging people to make choices in their life that maybe they didn't make before, and to be a little bit braver and to try something new. And I think because I bring a lot of human baggage with me, I've had a lot of experiences of shit going wrong, and when I meet the people that I work alongside, I kind of they don't see that when they see me until I tell them. And I'm very careful about what I talk about. So I do talk about my mental health with people when it's appropriate to do so. And where it's necessary, I'll talk about therapies and the fact that I've been through mental health services. And they're often a bit shocked by that. They're like, you should tell us. Yeah, have I? Has anybody ever got that shit together? But they don't know that, and because they'll hear my voice and think, oh, posh accent. There we go. She's from down south. She's had a lovely night.
I did think you were really white. Right, that's right. So when I heard down south for the first time, I was like, oh, right.
No, it's not. It's just an accent, isn't it? Like any other accent. But people have misconceptions when they hear my voice, and I think when I'm on the comedy circuit, that means I've got to work a little bit harder because people will assume I'm just a fucking Tory in disguise. And that actually makes me feel like blocking. It's disgusting, the idea. But in terms of being able to kind of inspire people, I am very fortunate in that when I tell people, well, actually, that kind of intervention might be really good for you, and this is how I know why. Because I can make a connection without telling them. I completely connect with your life. As we have to be boundaried, and we have to be very sensible about not blurring those boundaries with people. But when you hear people's stories, so often do I hear my life. And I think, well, do you know what? I have sort of got my shit together. I feel like I'm quite privileged, but I earned it. And it wasn't given to me, and I had to work hard, and I still have to work hard. But I think it does make a difference when people are like, okay, you just like me. And I think that is really important. And I think when you go out into comedy, people want to make a connection with you. And when I start my sets and I talk about the fact that I'm from Bournemouth and it's an affluent place and I've got this accent that would suggest I'm quite posh. And then when I start going through my set, people go, you don't really sound very posh, do they? It kind of, what do you call it? It's an interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah.
That's my biggest word of the day, Pansy of the week. That's all I've got.
Bit of gold star for it.
Thank you. I had to I've heard that word loads of times, and I had to look it up to see how it matched. But that's what I want to do. I want to be able to let people know that you can recover, you can get better, you can live the life that you want to. And it isn't always about, like, everyone imagines that you want to live in a big house and have a big car and actually most people just want their basic needs met. They want a warm, safe home. They want people around them that love them and care for them unconditionally, and they want food on the table. Yeah. Like, all the other stuff is just glamorous shit, isn't it?
Yeah, but that was that much to I see that, well, it's sadly failing in this country at the moment.
It's massively failing. People are really going without, and they're not even getting basic. I mean, we could spend hours on this, but people's basic needs aren't being met. And when your basic needs are not being met, how are you meant to manage all the other stuff? And so part of my everyday work is about helping people to find other ways to manage. And I think, well, if I can do that, and that's why I like my job. I love my job. It's great. And because I get to do that all the time. Mm-hmm. It's not always successful because some people are just not able to kind of work with me at that time, and that's fine. We're a revolving door. So I think I've worked with at least a couple of people 3-4 times in the last couple of years, and I'll probably see them again because changing your behaviour takes time.
Yeah, and it's not an overnight thing, is it? We're kind of, when you're in a good position, it's not an overnight thing. So now when you're fighting on all fronts just for your basic needs, then it's an whole nother level of difficulty.
Definitely.
And I think that is something I've learned through comedy and through building Bliss, is showing your vulnerabilities to people really makes a massive difference. I say, people are like, I don't know how you do get up there on stage and do that. But then I talk about what's led me to that. And then people, I make biggest compliments. People come up to me afterwards and go, oh my God, you were so talking about my, like, you know, especially if I talk about a difficult relationship with my mum. And that resonates with so many, particularly women. And they say, but being able to laugh at that is so cathartic. But you do have to expose those vulnerabilities. And I think I think there's more and more people doing it, and not like having this front of, yeah, everything's great, it does happen. And I think we need it a bit more. I mean, I found having to go through what I've been through recently, I've been open with my about struggling today, actually, but I can't concentrate on this because my brain's all over the place. But I will come back to it when my brain's working, and I'll do it properly. But it's much more hard to say that than go, oh, actually, I've got COVID or I've got cold, so I'm off sick. Yeah, I think we need to sort of normalise going, just having a bad day today. Yeah, start it.
My friend shared this with me yesterday, actually. We were at Kick's party, and she said, I've just haven't felt well. And for the first time in years, she just stopped. She's like, I didn't do uni, I didn't go to work, I called it sick. And as she said, I called it sick, but just everywhere in her life.
Yeah.
And when you're like, why is this not celebrated? Why is women, I think particularly, no offense to producer guy over there, but why are women unable to say, I need to rest, I need to stop, I need to call in sick? We just keep plowing on, don't we?
And then it gets worse and worse because like your physical health suffers. So then because you're feeling politically ill, your mental health suffers. And then the spiral, it's very hard to get out of the spiral. And I was forced to stop when my mum was in hospital. I got COVID, and obviously I with my own business, so there's no one working, there's no one doing it, there's nobody coming in. But I just had to say, I've got to stop now because my body is saying stop. Otherwise, there'll be a much more serious stop in the near future.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, you've got to listen to yourself. You have to do that as you get older as well, and you're fighting on the old lady conditions that we have to face as well.
It's all about menopause.
Yeah.
I can hate that. People say that phrase, oh, we love that for you. Like, can we not switch that? Menopause. Hate that for you. It fucking stops, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Also, apparently there are 67 different menopause symptoms, but there's probably more. 67.
Well, I heard this day that GPs only get 2 hours of training after the menopause.
Wow.
So that's it. That's the standard provision. So especially if you're going to see a male doctor who hasn't experienced it, they've had 2 hours training at a time. Just pull yourself together.
Literally the most irritating comment. I mean, if anyone in Liverpool listens to this podcast, is a really top tip for you. If your GP isn't paying it, because this is the arena I work in, if your GP is not paying attention to your symptoms, ask them to get on. They do a weekly call with a consultant called Paula Briggs. She's like a menopause guru. There's nothing she doesn't know. But GPs can have constant access to her and ask her questions. And so I met her at a seminar, and when you're like, oh, I'm so glad I did, because now I have a coil and I'm not gushing everywhere. Yes. So yeah, there we go. That's my health tip for the day.
So moving on to spark. Where did you find your spark from after all that adversity that you faced and you made your big move? What gave you your spark, do you think?
I don't know when or what. I don't know if there was a particular thing. Do you mean like spark as in terms of spark for comedy, or just life spark?
Yeah, your life spark. I think I'm not going to put up with where I am in life.
So I think I could probably pin it a little bit better. So Leighton, my absolute lunatic of a child, just turned 10. He was probably my spark. So we had Leighton, everything dramatic in my life. We couldn't have children naturally, so he was a product of IVF. There's a lovely story that goes with that, because he was our one and only functioning egg as well.
Wow.
So it was literally one egg in the entire barren basket of my womb. So when I became pregnant with Leighton, I'd also started a job. It was an organisation I'd previously worked for and had a brilliant experience. I'd gone back to be part of another project, and I was met with psycho boss from hell. And there was a lot of things going on around that. I could see it all playing out. You could see all the red flags. But I just decided, no, I'm just not going to engage with this. because I need to protect this one and only egg because I might not get another chance. So I let it go quite a lot. And when he was born, because I didn't qualify for mat leave, I had to go back to work quite quickly. So I was back maybe 4 months after having him, which, you know, for most parents, that's utterly ridiculous. That's not time off with a new baby at all. It's not even enough time for your body to recover, never mind bouncing out a child. It's hard down there, you know. It's rough.
I'm very glad I adopted. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, that would have been our next route.
Yeah.
Adoption would have been our next route, but managed to squeeze one out. So, oh, that sounds like a poo, doesn't it?
Produce an offspring.
I haven't shit your child out. So, when I was back in work, alongside being extremely tired because I had a non-sleeping child, he didn't sleep all the way through until he was 3.5. So I honestly don't know how I didn't crack sooner.
Wow. I just feel exhausted you thinking about that.
Yeah. I have an irreversible eye condition because of sleep deprivation. He is completely responsible for that, and he's going to know about that for the rest of his life.
So yeah, bring that up on his wedding day and the speech.
Yeah, 18th, 21st, wedding day. Yeah, it's all coming. Yeah, he can expect it all. So I then, when I'd had him and I went back to work, I felt like it was time to tackle the psycho boss from hell. But because I'd let a lot slide, and that happens in life, doesn't it? If you let certain behaviours go all the time, it then becomes more difficult to address those behaviours. And I thought, no, fuck it. This doesn't apply here.
Yeah.
Because I have no choice but to be here because I need to earn money to pay bills and you know, have a life. And I'm not going to let one stupid little man, and he was a little man, he was only about 5'5", so he was a little man. He kind of reminded me of Lord Farquaad from Shrek. He had the head and the wee body. It was a dick. Anyway, and a little Northern Irish dick as well. So I just decided I'd had enough. So I started documenting everything that he was doing. I wrote everything down. It's probably the most organized I've ever been in my life. And I think we had one particular occasion where he'd asked way too much of me. It wasn't possible to do. And I wasn't prepared to compromise. And it was at that point I thought, I've had enough. I'm going to throw all of this stuff over to the director. So I did. I've never done that before. I've never challenged. I mean, I've always been someone who kind of questions authority, always been a little bit like that, but never to the extent that I did. And unbeknownst to me at that moment, when I put my complaint in, and I named gross misconduct because of some of the things that he was doing, other people had also put complaints in the same week. There was, and there was this thought that there was some sort of collusion going on.
It was a targeted attack kind of thing.
And it absolutely wasn't. I just don't know if a particular group of people have just all snapped at the same time and thought, fuck this shit, I've had enough.
Yeah.
But I put the complaint in and he was suspended that day.
Wow.
And you know when you just have this like,
Good relief.
that.
Yeah.
And I think if I hadn't have had Leighton, would I have allowed that to continue a bit longer? I think maybe I would have addressed it earlier, because it's, you know, coming back to that sort of addressing behaviour a bit quicker. When you see it coming up and kind of saying, no, I don't like that. No, that's not acceptable. Because there was me doing that as well, kind of calling out a few things, but not going too nuts. So when I put that complaint in and he got suspended, it was like having a massive warm wee. It was the best feeling. And then it wasn't, because it was quite terrifying. But I think without Leighton, I probably wouldn't have found. And I think from that experience, it has made me a completely different human being. I'm not the same person post psycho boss trauma.
Yeah.
Because I ended up becoming quite unwell as a result of that. And I learned a few more later what exactly that was. And it's kind of allowed me to put boundaries in, and like boundaries is probably the theme for me today. Because now when I go to work, I have very clear boundaries, and I've had to learn. And my friend Nikki, my inspiration, she said, Heidi, have you tried something called radical candor? And I'm like, oh God, tell me what that is. And it's about caring personally about people, but challenging directly. And I needed to learn how to do that, because I was then fearful of going into workplaces, because the whole complaints procedure and being interviewed over and over and over again, people looking for holes in your story when there weren't any. Like, it was all very evident.
You're the wrongdoer.
Of course I am. Of course it's the woman. Couldn't possibly be Lord Farquaad. No. So when I started listening to Radical Candor, I was like, yeah, this really resonates with me. And again, this all started from this one little boy, and I realized, you know what, I'm going to have to tell people to pack that shit in, because am I going to let my son get away with stuff like that? No. And you know yourself, you're a mom, you're a parent. Like, if we don't call our children out on their bullshit, like, we're setting them up to fail when they're bigger.
Yeah. And I love the fact that generational thing that we'd started on, really, you were saying, going all the way back in your history of your grandfather, and we are now the generation where we could stop that generational trauma and the generational habits, and we do owe it to sort of the future generation to do that, don't we? So, but you do need a bit of spark.
You do. You definitely need a bit of spark. It needs to come from somewhere, and you've got to be prepared for what might be uncomfortable. So I would consider myself to be quite a good manager. Like, I work really well with my team. I think we've got a lot of honesty, but a lot of that has come from using radical candor. Because say you were like doing something really annoying, like all the time in work, like it might be, I don't know, like tapping on a table, constantly whistling, but it really made me feel annoyed. Now, I had an incident in another place I worked before the pandemic, and the team of people that I'd inherited were inherently just do what the fuck they want when they wanted. And then I've arrived and gone, no, you're not. No,
doing it like that.
No. But there was one person, and they did bring their own mental health shit to the table. When they were having a bad day, everybody got to know about it. Door slamming, fridge slamming, stomping. I would be deliberately left out of tea runs. You know, if someone's offering, but not tea.
Not tea. We've just established you don't drink tea. I made the error of making Heidi tea this morning, because I asked her for a brew, and she actually wanted a coffee, but when you're northern, brew means tea, so I will never make that mistake again.
Don't offer me a tea, it won't go down well. Well, it won't go down.
It's gone down the sink. It's gone.
So, like, her behaviour was off the scale, but I don't think anybody had told her that's not acceptable in the workplace. And because that had gone on for so long, it was then accepted in the workplace that was how you dealt with her. You just get on with it.
Mary, she's always like that.
Yeah,
let her go on with it.
Yeah, she's having a bad day. Just leave her to it. She'll be all right in a bit. And I just thought, no, this is having an uncomfortable effect on me because of the environment I'd come from. Working in a toxic work environment is not healthy. You've got to challenge it. And actually, it's my workplace. I have to spend more time there than I get to spend at home. So it damn well needs to be a decent environment for me. So I started listening to Radical Candor podcasts. And when I first sat down with this person and used Radical Candor, it went okay. It got better as time progressed. And I just sat them down and said, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I think it's really important for me to share this with you, that when you come into work and it's been a difficult morning for you and you are slamming doors and banging things and kind of being quite rude to people, it makes me feel really uncomfortable. I just wanted to kind of share that with you and see if you had any thoughts on that. I mean, she didn't take it particularly well the first time.
No.
And I think it was because of the way it was a bit obnoxious in the way that I delivered it, and I hadn't meant it to be. Because the practice of Radical Candor is about caring personally, and at that point, Did I really care about that person personally? Probably not.
Yeah.
I got to know them better, and then I did.
Yeah.
But at that point, I just wanted their behaviour to stop because it was making me feel really uncomfortable. It was affecting other people, but they were quite happy. But it was bothering me. I didn't want to work in an environment like that. But it did get better. But, you know, I think we have a responsibility as human beings to call people out. Like, hey, that thing that you're doing, it really fucking annoys me. Otherwise, you build up loads of resentment, don't you?
Yeah, and I think there's so much in that in offices that must be the case. It's probably tiny things sometimes. Like, you know, you always put the milk back in the fridge in the wrong direction. You know, do something really trivial, or no, and it just builds up. But then it'll end up actually in a blazing row about something else completely unrelated. And I suppose it's the same in any relationship, partnership. That if you just actually say, "It's really annoying me," actually, you know, like Joe says to me, "Can you just move your socks out of the lounge? Like, could you just move your socks and put your shoes like in a straight line?" Because like, we always joke if we ever get a divorce, it'll be because of my socks being left in random places. So, but that's like on a funny level, but it is that, you know, that minutiae is something that builds up into something big. But the radical can be, it's not. It's a concept I've heard of, but not something I've looked into in great depth. So, might have to get someone on the podcast who can talk about that alongside your menopause lady. I think she'd be a great.
Yeah. So. If you can get your hands on her.
Yeah.
But I forgot what the bloody question was. We've rabbited on.
Well, that was your spark, I think.
Oh, that was my spark, Sir Nathan. Yeah.
So moving on to success then. What's your definition of success, and has that changed over the years?
It's definitely changed over the years. When I was younger, I thought success was about having money.
Yeah.
And having like a big house and a fancy car, and you know, that's what I thought successful was, and being the CEO of a company. That would have been, yes, that's what success is. And as I've got older, I thought, well, actually, success for me is just basic needs.
Yeah.
Like the basics. Home, loving family, good relationships, good friends, food on the table. And I think for the most part, most people were kind of like that. But like, I read a book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Absolutely love that book. It's something I go back to every time I'm kind of like wobbling off and thinking, having a little wobble. And one of the things they talk about in that book is about being mediocre and that being perfectly okay. I think we forget that that's all right. Like, I consider myself to be mediocre. I don't have an issue with that. I don't think I'm there. You don't think I'm down there. I mean, you probably don't think I'm mediocre.
You're not mediocre.
But in my view, my lens is there's nothing particularly special about me. I'm not particularly intelligent or clever. Like, I can't remember details to things. Fuck, I can't even remember what I did last week. So, you know, I'll see people in the street, they'll have a full-on chat with me, and I'm like, no clue.
No idea.
Not a clue who you are. But I'll go along with it. Like, I look like it. I'm like, yeah, great. Ooh, no idea. But success for me is what I have right now. I have choices, and that's success in itself. When we look at the level of deprivation in this country, it's vile. These are people without choices or less choices, but also they don't see themselves as successful. So when we work alongside people, we'll look at little things that can help build on that idea of what success looks like. Because success to us might be, I get a 15-minute gig and it's paid.
Yeah.
Like, that's success for us. But success to someone that I work with is, I got up today and got dressed and brushed my teeth and went outside.
Yeah. And that's a big set for them.
I think it's on measure, isn't it? It's got to be different for different people. And, you know, some people really struggle with those basic things like getting up and getting dressed. And that's why I kind of like, you know, it's a hard question, isn't it?
Well, I think, but when you said you were younger and you think of the material things that you measure as success, but really when you look at that at its core, it is about safety, and your basic needs being met, isn't it? And when you're younger and you think the way of having that met is to be rich or to have material things. So it still comes back to that core of feeling safe and secure. And then, I mean, for me, it's a lot of it's to do with freedom as well, which I guess is the same as having choices to choose what you want to do and how you do things. And yeah, the material things. I mean, my dream was always to have a Lamborghini or whatever, because that's the circles I was moving in when, being in the legal world, especially being a northerner and going down to London and mixed in with the legal circle down there. It was all about money. And I remember my first day at bar course, and they said, "Why do you want to be a barrister?" And I said, "Oh, because I want to assert rights for people who can't do it for themselves." And he literally laughed and said, "What? What do you mean? What do you mean? You mean, no, you're just doing it because you want to make money. That's the only reason to be a lawyer." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm not sure." We're on the right path here. So it does, and it is amazing how it moves over time. And I think perhaps when you have your own children as well, and especially like when you've got children with additional needs, that it is a completely different measure of success to them as well. And that's what I was saying before. It's not about going to university, getting a degree. It's like, can you get up? And I've had this conversation with my daughter Navy, that I said, I don't want you to have to wait till you're 45 to follow your dreams like I have. I want you to wake up and go, right, I'm going to get up, I'm going to do my art, I'm going to design my fashion, and do it now, don't wait. And that's why we're trying to encourage her to get to that point so that she's happy. But that's not a message you get in the media. It's still, as you've just said, about feeling mediocre. Everything's all about improve yourself. Well, self-improvement, that's a whole iron in Waterstones. And
what does that look like?
Well,
what does because self-improvement to us looks like, how can I better myself as a human being? How can I like just looking around here with all the different books you've got, and the book in the toilet about it's okay to be weird. We're all weird. Yeah. And you're like, that's a book I would probably pick up. But like, who defines like what that is meant to be? It's not fair to say when somebody should be doing things that are going to fulfill a dream. Like, I think it's wrong that we've had to wait to middle-age them to follow dreams and aspirations that we had when we were younger, based on the fact that, I think for me, I didn't have choices, so therefore I didn't get to dream. And now I'm like middle-aged. Okay, I can dream now. Yeah, I can dream of things that I want to be doing, and that's okay, and that's supported. But like, why should anybody have to wait? It's unfair, and it doesn't even need to be about resources. I think it just needs to be about finding your right people, doesn't it? Yeah. Find some people that inspire you, who aren't going to be judgmental. Well, maybe they are going to be judgmental because we're all judgmental. It's one of those annoying questions on job interviews, isn't it? Tell me about all the different ways you're not judgmental. I always deliberately go the opposite and say, well, actually, it's a really stupid question. Yeah. Probably why I've lost out on jobs in the past.
Well, I think everybody is, aren't they? Whether you try to see or not, it's just inbuilt, isn't it? Because I always, they say that someone's made a decision on whether they like you or not within like 7 seconds of meeting you, first impressions. But I think that's an energetic thing, getting to the woo-woo side of things, and why you're drawn to some people and repelled by others. But yeah, that first impression, gut instinct, is generally right, I think.
Yeah. Well, success to some people is like what their face looks like. Like the explosion, literally, the explosion of women particularly, who are injecting their faces left, right and centre.
It's crazy. I was, and they were like, oh, they were 23 and having Botox. And I was like, I mean, everybody's free to do what they want. There's talk about being non-judgmental, but I'm like, but you're 23, you've got lovely skin. You don't need to be injecting yourself with some sort of point.
You've got no wrinkles, love. Leave your face alone.
And I think that's the problem with social media, and that's the worry for our next generation, and certainly my teenagers, is what they're being exposed to all the time.
Yeah.
And like, that's why I set up Building Bliss as sort of an antithesis to the usual wellness content of people floating around in white and LA houses. And, this is...
I don't see a sound bath here, but is there one?
There have been in some... There have got a miniature sound bowl over there. So, but as I say, my mission is well-being without the wankiness. So...
which is good for me.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to achieve. So, to wrap up then, now we have a tradition on this podcast, which is the reverse of the usual one, because you normally say, what would you say if you could see yourself now? But I like to ask guests, what would your younger self say to you if they could see you now?
Ooh, I like that question. It's quite good. Probably should want to say, who the fuck are you? Why? I don't recognise you one little bit. I think probably younger Heidi would definitely be like completely unrecognisable as a human being. On so many levels. I think she'd probably say you made really good choices. Probably a little bit too sensible sometimes, which doesn't really fit in with who I am as a human being, because I am a massive child a lot of the time and not particularly sensible. But I think she'd say you've done the right thing at the times when you did them. I'd like to hope she'd be saying you waited a bit too long to follow some of those dreams. She's probably got a point. But it's life, isn't it? Yeah. This is what happens.
And it's never too late. That's, I think, something you realise when you get older, is it isn't ever too late.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm aging backwards at the moment. It's really weird, because I remember being 20 and like there were people at work who were 40. They'd be like, oh God, they're well old, aren't they? And now I'm 46. I'm like, I don't feel any different. I actually feel younger, because I'm finally doing the things I wanted to do when I was younger. Not to get into too deep inner child stuff, but but I do feel that, and I think that not giving a shit does grow as you get older.
It definitely does.
And you can't impart to younger people. You've just got to live through the muck and bullets and come out the other side, hopefully.
I think she'd probably tell you a lot of people are going to tell you a lot of lies. So messaging I heard when I was younger. So I think we were talking about how particularly women view themselves. My auntie used to always say to me, if you just lose some weight, you'd be very pretty.
Classic.
And when you're like, at the time, you're like, right, okay. So attractiveness is measured on how much you've got hanging off your ass.
Yeah.
Right. So therefore I am unattractive. But that was constant messaging. But it was a lie.
Yeah.
And we've still got a succession of women now who think that they're measured on what their body looks like or what their face looks like. And I know we've had a little bit of a what the fuck about the Botox stuff, because it's just gone a little bit too crazy. But like, who the fuck got to measure how attractive someone is? And in the same breath, it's like people are measuring how intelligent people are. So when I was at school, I didn't do very well. I did all right, not a complete idiot, but I wasn't there that much, and I thought the teachers were lazy on reflection.
Yeah.
If they'd picked up on things that I needed from them to meet basic needs, would I have done better at school? Of course I would have done.
Yeah, you weren't. It's not for a lack of intelligence. It was a lack of resource and stability that you need to be in a position to learn.
But I think my younger self would definitely be telling me people are going to lie to you a lot, and you've got to pick up on those lies a lot quicker, because it's going to save you a lot of pain and a lot of upset. Because I've spent, since my childhood, what are we on, 3 decades, moving into the 4 decades of pure self-loathing, thinking there's something wrong with the way I look. And that, as just a basic function, has monotonized my adult life. Always trying to lose weight, always trying to be fitter, always trying to look nicer. And I just think, I've wasted such a lot of time on that subject.
Yeah.
But that was instilled at me from a child. And I think younger me would definitely be saying now, just let that shit go.
Let that go.
Let it go before it affects you like this, because it does.
Yeah.
It's
so ingrained though, isn't it? Especially our generation. And it just seems to get worse. That everything's based on physical appearance.
All the time.
And not what you can bring to the party. And it's something you have to overcome when you're a comedian, because you have to watch your videos back.
Oh, I fucking hate that.
Oh, no. So you do have to get over yourself a bit, don't you?
Yeah, it is helpful. It is helpful for that. Like when I watch my videos back, I cringe. I cringe at the sound of my voice. Like when I hear this back, I'm going to be like, oh my God, I sound like such a knob. But I'm going to pull every little thing apart. But that's years of learning how to do that. And I'm so thankful that you have Building Bliss, because you're doing the exact opposite. And the younger you can work alongside people, the better.
Yeah.
Because instead of learning to tear ourselves down at a really early age, we need to learn to build ourselves up. Not psycho, I'm the best in the world. Like, because that also doesn't really land very well with the general population.
No.
Just makes you look stupid.
Getting into the Trump realms of self-belief, isn't it?
That's world power.
Sociopath. Yes.
Nice little narcissist in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But that's what we're missing, I think. And, you know, it's so lovely that this is something that you're doing and you've got that going on now. And, you know, the more people we can do that, again, it links into one of your questions about inspiration. If we can teach people the skills of what their self-worth is, and actually that they are beautiful, because I don't know about you, but I see an awful lot of ugly human beings, and it's got nothing to do with how they look.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah, they might be the most attractive person in the world.
Symmetrically.
Yes, but their personality is very ugly.
Hideous.
Yeah.
And I find those people very, very ugly human beings. And like you say, they might look aesthetically pleasing. You come across them all the time, and I think with men that happens a lot. Like, you'll see men and they might be nice and, you know, an attractive looking man, but you cut away some of that and it is just pure yuck.
Yeah.
Pure awfulness on the inside. Ugh. I think I've quite enjoyed this podcast. I don't know what I was expecting.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, it's been great.
It's been a lot of fun.
One last thing I forgot to ask you.
Go on.
Your favourite joke? If I put you on the spot now.
You've put me on the spot, and I knew you were going to ask me this. I haven't got one.
Well, that's fine.
I ain't got one.
Yeah.
One of mine? I think, again, it's about that I like other people's jokes. There's some really funny people on the circuit. When we were talking before about office politics, I watched a comedian called Kay Nicholson.
Oh yeah.
And a little section of her set was about I think she called her Karen or Brenda, nicking the milk in the office and like putting a line on it. And I mean, you know, maybe you should invite Kay on. She can execute her own joke much better than I can. But it is one that it's just a simple, silly jokes. But I haven't got the memory function to remember them.
No. I can remember loads of good dad jokes from when I was little, but I can't remember new ones now. So, yeah.
There is one that makes my son laugh, and it's quite tragic. Knock, knock.
Who's that?
No, it's not even a knock, knock joke. Fucking hell. Oh, my God. What do you call a fly with no legs?
I don't know.
A walk.
I think we should end on that.
I think we better.
Of Comedy Genius. Thank you, Heidi. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast, and I can't wait for people to listen to this because I think they're going to get so much benefit from it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.